and you can go ahead.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I am Abdurrahman Okte, Burdur Mehmet Akif Ersoy University in Turkey. Today, I'm going to talk about our study entitled Examination of Associate Degree Students' Opinions, Difficulties, General Opinions, Difficulties, and Suggestions for Teaching Programming Language. So, famous people have said about programming. Problem status. In the studies conducted by experts and educators, it is seen that there are some difficulties in programming education, and the desired level of academic success in this field has not yet been reached. In addition, despite the efforts made for programming language education, programming language is seen as the most difficult and unsuccessful course for students. Purpose of the research. The main purpose of the research is to determine the programming problems experienced by associate degree students. Based on some of the variables used in the study, answers are sought to the following questions. What are the students' perspectives on programming language? What are the most difficult points in teaching programming? What is the behavior of the students in the difficulties they encounter during coding? What is the effect of coding in a foreign language on learning performance? Importance of research. Software plays an effective role in the development of all sectors. Developed countries which are aware of this encourage the software industry. In our country, it is seen that the state attaches importance to the informatics and especially the software sector and has developed various policies in this direction. In this context, it is thought that these tests will contribute to the ongoing efforts to develop coding curriculum by revealing the difficulties experienced by students in learning programming language, and will guide the educators of this field in making more effective programming teaching. Programming teaching requires skills such as abstraction, generalization, transference, and critical thinking. Experience in this area has shown that the problem generally arises from the student's failure to understand certain abstract programming concepts, such as control structures to solve problems during the initial learning phase. Another factor affecting success in programming teaching is which programming language is taught. Difficulties for teaching programming language. When faced with any difficulty, most students would rather ask a college for the solution or simply give up than try to solve the problem. Learning becomes more effective when they find the solution. There are studies showing that mathematical knowledge is very important for programming, and there is a significant relationship between programming skills and mathematics. They are not aware of how and for what purpose they will use technology, and they mostly use technology for entertainment purpose instead of producing it. The mentioned difficulties have summarized in this slide. Cases of failure in programming. It is given in the table under 3 headings. Research model. In this case, it was thought that the most appropriate method to be used in the research was a case study, since it was aimed to investigate the problems experienced in programming teaching as a situation and to investigate it in depth by interviewing the students. Therefore, it was designed with the case study method based on the qualitative research paradigm. Study group of the research. The target audience of the study consists of associate degree students who have taken a computer programming course at least once. Purposive sampling method was preferred among the non-random sampling methods, since it was thought that the students who took the programming course would be used within the scope of the research. With the purposeful sampling method, students who had taken the programming course at least once were determined, and those who want to participate in the research were determined by informing these students. When selecting students, considering their high school graduation areas and gender, 4 different groups of 22 students with similar destiny were obtained. Data collection process. In the study, which was based on questions and answers, 5 questions were asked from general to specific. Focus group interviews were conducted with pre-repeated, semi-structured frame questions, and the interview recordings were recorded with a voice recorder. During the interview, different questions were asked based on what the students said. The recorded audio recordings were then transcribed and interpreted under certain terms by making descriptive analysis. Since the interviews were planned to be recorded in a way that would make the participants feel comfortable and the interviews were planned to be recorded, the environment was prepared accordingly. Before the interview started, the participants were informed about the interview. Focus group interview calendar. Data collection tool. The focus group interview method was used as the data collection tool of this research, which was carried out to determine the difficulties experienced in teaching programming language from the student's perspective. Focus group interview questions were prepared by taking into account the difficulties experienced in learning programming language, which is the theoretical framework of the research. After examining the prepared questions by experts in the relevant field, their opinions were also taken and finalized. A pilot study was conducted with a group of 5 people to determine the intelligibility of the questions. Semi-structured focus group interviews were conducted with the help of these questions. Data collection tool. The predetermined framework question in the focus group interviews are as follows. What does the programming language mean to you? What challenge do you face while writing code? What do you do when you encounter an error? What are the fun aspects of coding? How do you think programming language can be taught more easily? How much of your computer time to devote to programming? What are the effects of creating a competitive environment? What do you do when you get bored while programming? How does being in English or Turkish affect your programming learning? What was the impact of your high school programming course? What is the difference between coming from a straight and vocational high school? What would be the benefit of teaching the course theoretically or practically? Analysis of data. The interview recordings taken from the participants were recorded in a storage unit and made ready for analysis. Audio recordings were converted into written text in separate files. Translation and analysis process were done by the researcher. The interviews obtained in the focus group interviews were analyzed by the researcher in themselves. In the study, the interviews were analyzed and interpreted using the content analysis method. With content analysis, the main purpose of which is to reach the concepts and relationships expressed in data, the researchers compared the interviews and tried to identify opposing and similar views. The opinions determined are given in the research findings by structuring the frequency distribution and percentage according to the frequency numbers. Distribution of participants by gender, grade level, and high school types. Pre-college programming experience. Views on programming language. Then students' question. Difficulties in programming. Then students' question. The fun aspects of programming. Students' question. What to do when encountering an error in programming? Views on how to teach programming. Discussion and conclusion. When the results reached in the research are examined, the primary difficulties encountered by the students in the programming teaching process It has come to the forefront as it contains too much code, has problems in debugging, and the programming language is not Turkish. 50% of the students in our study claim that although their past experience have an effect at the beginning level in programming teaching. This difference closed in time, while 36.4% claims that there is no difference at all. Only 13.6% of the students state that their past experience made a difference in their programming learning. As it is understood from the literature review and the result obtained from the study, the main point to be considered is how students learn better and how programming is taught to them. In this context, the difficulties of programming language teaching are that the students are foreign to the programming language, the difficulty of the debugging process, and the low time per students due to the high number of students. It can be talked that the high level of interest of students in the subject, the sense of achievement, and the expectation of earnings will affect the teaching process positively. It is considered that directing the students during the teaching process in a way that will contribute to the learning of the subject by doing it from simple to difficult will contribute to success in programming teaching. Suggestions. Based on the finding obtained as a result of the study, it is considered that it would be appropriate to consider the following issues in programming teaching and learning. In programming teaching, education can be given with programming language that do not contain too much code at the beginner level. It may be beneficial to focus on visual programming instead of objective programming at the beginning. Programming language with Turkish support can be used. It may be appropriate to allocate more space to possible errors and debugging in the lessons. Students who do not have previous experience can be supported with additional course at the beginning stage. It can be taken into account that the students who will be given programming education should have high-level cognitive skills. This photo is focus group discussion memory. For group, one of them is thank you for listening.